What's going on? It's Instructor Mike. All right, let's get right to it. In the shooting tragedy of filmographer Elena Hutchinson, pictured here, you all by now already know that Alec Baldwin and the armorer, Ms. Gutierrez, was charged with involuntary manslaughter by New Mexico prosecutors. But the charges have taken a sudden turn. It's this thing called ex post facto. What is that? We'll talk about it here on Instructor Mike.
What's going on, you? This is Instructor Mike. You can follow me on Facebook at Mike Brown or Instructor Mike. Follow me on.
It could be you as a citizen, and you walked up and you see somebody. It look heavy? I don't know. Special, that must be. But it's good to know that this can handle the high pressure rounds of the flooding. Ready to go.
Make eye contact with me. He's still trying to get it open a couple of times.
So tail.
All right, let's go ahead and dive right on into it. You can subscribe on this YouTube page, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. You can go on Facebook at Mike Brown or Instructor Mike, on Instagram, TikTok, yes, Mike said it, on Twitter at Instructor Mike 1. And so again, subscribe to this YouTube page, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. Let's go on ahead and dive into it. So prosecutors in New Mexico have downgraded the involuntary manslaughter charges against actor Alec Baldwin in the fatal shooting of cinematographer Helena Hutchins on the Rust movie set in October of 2021. Court documents that were filed on Friday showed that Alec Baldwin still faces one count of involuntary manslaughter, which is a fourth-degree felony, and that carries with it a prison sentence of, at maximum, 18 months in prison. But what did prosecutors do? Prosecutors removed what's known as the firearm enhancement, a part of the criminal code that extends prison sentences when firearms are involved in the commission of a crime. And that decision came more than 1 week after the actor's legal team disputed the enhancement charging based on the charges that were filed. They argued that the prosecutors committed an unconstitutional and legal error called ex post facto by charging Mr. Baldwin under a statute that did not exist under the state of the accident. In other words, at the time that the situation occurred, and notice their language, they called it an accident. Prosecutors call it a criminal charge. So it's important that you get attorneys who are going to help defend you and be careful about the language that they use. Okay. Changes to New Mexico's firearm enhancement law took effect in March of 2022. But if you all can recall, this matter took place in 2021. The current version of the law calls for an additional 5 years of prison time on top of the 18 months in cases where a firearm was discharged in the commission of certain felonies. But Baldwin's lawyers again state that the Rust shooting took place, as we stated before, in 2021, about 6 months before the charges or the changes in the law took effect. Under the previous version of the law, an enhancement of 3 years would only apply when a gun had been brandished, which would have required prosecutors to prove intent to intimidate or injure. I think they're going to have a hard time trying to meet that burden, especially on a movie set. Okay. In order to avoid further litigious distractions by Mr. Baldwin and his attorneys, this is according to the prosecutors in the district attorney's office in New Mexico. They stated that, that they have removed the firearm enhancement to the involuntary manslaughter charges in the death of Helena Hutchinson, again on the Rust film set. They said the prosecution's priority is securing justice, not securing billable hours for big city attorneys. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Sound off in the comments. Remember, we talked about this before when I went live, and I was talking about when you hear the prosecution, especially involving the death of someone where they are alleging criminal negligence, rising to the level of seeking charges for the death of a person. Remember when I told you this before, and if you hadn't, take a chance to look at some of the previous videos on this topic. Whenever they are only seeking justice but are not seeking prison time, I smell a weak case. I smell a weak case. Don't want to take up too much more of your time. What do you think on this? Sound off in the comments. Do you think Alec Baldwin and the armorer will be convicted of involuntary manslaughter? I will tell you this. I think the armorer definitely should be convicted of involuntary manslaughter. She had a duty. And we can argue things about Alec Baldwin, but that's one of the things that I love about the position that I hold. I'm not Republican or Democrat, not conservative or liberal. I am straight down the middle. It just depends on the issue, as that gives me the ability to be able to stay in the middle as much as I can and then look at things from both sides. Alec Baldwin, is anti-gun and has been very outspoken against firearms. But those of you all who have watched his movies, you know that Alec Baldwin has used firearms in the past and has not had, that I know of, right? I could be wrong. If I am wrong, correct me in the comments. He has not had any previous incidents. And so when we're talking about duty, right? We can say the duty is on Alec. We can say the duty is on the armorer. I would definitely say the duty is on the armorer. I will introduce you this scenario and then we'll end it. And I'd really like to hear or read in the comments what you have to say about this. For those who may attend my concealed carry class, if they attend my concealed carry class, right, I can sit there and teach them over and over again. But those of you all who are professional firearms instructors, there's a huge difference between teaching someone in a less stress-filled classroom that's not the range environment, and then putting them in a range environment, and caveat, don't put them on a range environment where it's actively being used by other instructors and students. So now you got the stress of the gunfire and the fear of being unalived and other triggers that sometimes your students may come with. So now you've got introduction of different stressors into their brain, right? Different environment. And so now I tell them to do something as the instructor and then walk away and they do something different. Who's responsible? Is that person responsible? Yeah, we can argue that. What do you think her attorneys are going to say if she ends up having to get attorneys or he ends up having to get attorneys? But who are they going to hold ultimately responsible as the consummate, educated, and trained professional who's supposed to be able to see the forest and not just the trees, much less the branch of that tree? It's going to be me. And so that's why it's very important for the person whose control and responsibility it is 100% to make sure that you run a very tight ship, planning for the worst of the worst that could happen. There should have been no rounds on that set. Whose responsibility it was to ensure that primarily and then secondarily, right? Whose responsibility? You all want Alec Baldwin to be the firearms instructor, the armorer, the executive producer, the cinematographer. You want Alec Baldwin to be everything except what he was being. The executive producer, director, whatever hat he was filling then, and the actor in the movie too. Come on. We may not agree. But this case is going to be interesting. Interesting. Plus giving the lackadaisical standards of Hollywood. Right? If a firearms instructor does something, you have the NRA, you have the USCCA, the National African American Gun Association has a course, right, where they certify firearms instructors. They hold their instructors to account, right? Law enforcement agencies across all 50 states, both city, county, and state, they hold their firearms instructors accountable. Federal government holds their firearms instructors accountable. There's an accrediting body that you will be held accountable to. A curricula, insurance, something to say, this is what you were taught, this is what you were trained, this is the test you took, this is what you passed. Ergo, you are accountable. What do these armorers have? What did Alec have beyond a basic firearms course? And it's amazing how people want to eat their cake and have it too. It's amazing how we in the profession will say your 4-hour course isn't enough. The 8-hour course isn't enough. The 16-hour course isn't enough. It's not a destination. You must train. But then you want to say the course that Alec Baldwin took was enough? How sway? Sound off in the comments. This is Instructor Mike, and you've been trained.
What's going on, you? This is Instructor Mike. You can follow me on Facebook at Mike Brown or Instructor Mike. Follow me
It
on
could be you as a citizen, and you walked up and you see somebody. Look heavy. They don't help. Special, that must be. But it's good to know that this can handle the high pressure rounds of the flooding.
Ready to go. Make eye contact with me. He's still trying to get it open a couple of times.
So chill.